It's probably the worst segue ever, but I appreciate you guys hopping on
Of course.
and taking some time today. I was so captivated when I spoke with Jamie like a couple of months ago, and we were talking about Action sponsoring an upcoming fight card, and she was explaining what Scoring Senate was. Uh, the first thing I said was, "Yes, count me in." And then like the next thing was, "Hey, by the way, I have a podcast and I've got to figure out a way to get the people behind this on the show so we can talk about it because not enough people know." And I think that this is one of the greatest ideas in combat sports. And quite honestly, I mean, it's something that's talked about by a lot of people, but I've only ever heard it talked about and nobody's really taken the time and put in the effort to make it happen. So, I want to dive into what Scoring Senate is and we can kind of go from there. But, obviously, Ian Mccall, uh, former
Yes.
UFC, pleasure to have you on. Your credentials are obvious when it comes to this, as a former fighter, somebody who understands, more than any judge that's currently scoring fights today, what goes on and who's winning through positions. But Steve, can you give me a little bit of an understanding of your background and
Absolutely.
how do you get tied in with this whole community of fighters and experts in fight to start this journey together?
Absolutely. So I'm in Seattle. I used to be with Microsoft. Spent about 15 years there. Started as a researcher, ended up as a software architect. And during the time, I've always been bored. I've always wanted to do something more than just my day job. And I don't remember exactly how I got connected to the first. I remember now. I got connected to a startup because I was working with startups, and that startup was in Vegas. And that gentleman had a connections, and well, he's a friend of Frank Mir and a bunch of other very well-known fighters, and that was my first introduction to the first person in the fight game. And shortly after that, I realized that since I'm bored, why not just apply my technical skills to solve um, problems that are pretty obvious in this thing that I watch on TV. And I've been watching MMA fights for a while. I think I got introduced during the Lyoto Machida era, around that time where Anderson Silva was kicking ass and all that. And and the more I talk to uh, fighters and people connected to the game, the more I'm hearing people tell me about a few recurring themes that are problematic in MMA. One of which is fighters' pay, number one, and the second one is judges' decisions. And at that point, I was a casual. I didn't quite look into and analyze a fight and understand the implications of what happens when a fighter gets screwed by the judges because they weren't paying attention or they did not know what they were looking at. And so I figured that, along with a buddy, we figured that it would be great if there is a alternate way, an alternate scores to the official scores. At that time, I was ambitious. I thought that let's just propose a new system and they'll use it. But it's much harder than that. It's more complicated. There are more groups involved in that. And fast forward to about the start of the pandemic, I was introduced to Ian. I was on the verge of giving up. I was on the verge of shelving the idea, and I met a wonderful person that a lot of us know by the name of Rose Gracie, and Rose introduced me to Ian, and I told Ian what I was doing, and then the rest was history. Well, history to come.
Oh, that's awesome. And Ian, as a fighter, it's interesting. Steve mentioned right at the very beginning that he had heard these two reoccurring themes, right? Fighter pay and bad decisions. And I think the irony is that there's kind of a tie between the two of them in the way that fighters are compensated, where you're paid to show and then you're paid a win bonus on top of that. So the fact that like two of these reoccurring themes of negativity tied together where you can have a bad decision impact what's already shitty pay in a lot of cases and keep you from moving on, impact you in a rankings perspective. What's the first thing that goes through your mind when you hear this idea that Steve's talking about?
Well, many people know that I got screwed many moons ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think other people want to talk about it more than I want to talk about it. It's not that I don't care to hear about it. It's just like, okay, I got screwed a long time ago, guys. Like, we should probably get over it. But I also need to look at that as my opportunity to also teach and not be butthurt and like, oh, I got screwed. Like, no, it's if you're not evolving, you're not becoming better. And I just and getting mad about something that happened a long time ago still is like, that's pointless. The first thing that I said to Steve was, hey, if you're gonna change from the judges to senators, you also have to figure out a new point system. We haven't got there yet. I'm not good with mathematics, but that was our first conversation. We started talking, going back and forth, and I was like, yeah, of course I'll help. This is a great idea. And we got on the phone and we just started talking about, just the certain opportunities that are in the space, because no one's done it right yet. I've seen a couple different people try. I've seen another, who knows how many people talk about it. Everyone wants to talk about it, but like you said, no one wants to change it. No one wants to actually step up and do it. And I know somebody like myself who have always had an incredible relationship with not only the MMA community as a whole, the fans, the fighters, but also the UFC. And for me, I'm the kid that was really good, obviously, at fighting and martial arts my whole life, sports as a whole. But I had the people I looked up to, all the people I was like, oh my God, these are my heroes. Kid Yamamoto or BJ Penn, Chuck Liddell. These are all my friends. Well, I mean, kids passed away, but, Ensign Inouye I talk to everybody. I get Boss Rutan comes over to my house. Like, that's the coolest thing ever, so I'm able to go to them and go, hey guys, what's up? Like, I have this cool opportunity. What do you think? And I talk to them about it and they say, cool, awesome. Well, where do we go from here? And I get them in front of Steve, and then he closes the deal, as you can say. It's just, people see that there's nothing else trying to be accomplished here except fixing the sport. The pay is getting fixed. I see young fighters like Chito Vera and Alex Perez making enough money to buy a house in Orange County. That's you're making good enough money. You should be making more, of course. There should be a zero on your pay, but you got to be realistic. Until we can get the UFC to fork over that half like other sporting organizations do, then this is how it goes, guys. But we have to do this as a whole. So we got together a bunch of different senators to really latch onto this. And, with people like, yourself involved with us getting the word out like this, it's going to catch fire. This has to be a grassroots movement. And this is exactly what we're doing. When you've got all these different Hall of Famers, whether it's Boss or Rashad, you got guys like myself or, Heather Joe Clark. I mean, you got people from all over the spectrum, males, females, Matt Brown, Eves Edwards. There's like all these legendary people that are getting the word out. It's just, we have to come in, I think, with definitely a new scoring system next. That should be our next thing we do. And then from there, kind of, I don't want to say attack the UFC with it, because that's not the right way to go about it, because then we won't get anything. But to just show them, like, look, this is the power we wield.
Yes. And I was going to ask you that, like, how do you get to that next step, and what does it entail to become the sanctioned scoring system? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of steps that would have to happen for that to occur, right?
Oh man. So the person that brought it up first, of course, in his cynical, I don't want to say bitter, but Dominic Cruz. I called Dominic. We got him on the phone, and I love Dominic. People like to hate on Dominic, but I get it. He's just a little, just the way he words things.
No, that conversation was eye-opening. It was great.
Exactly. And
he gave it
just
to
was
us.
Like, right. That's what he does. It's what we all need, that friend who can talk to us that way and really bring us back down to reality. Mm-hmm. And he just, and of course, Frank Trigg as well, being the guy that like understands this incredibly well. Just as like, look, we have to tread very lightly, and we have to understand that there's there's a whole actual commission that's here. That's like a governing body. So for us to show them, they're gonna just like close the door in our face. They're gonna laugh at us. Like, you guys think you're gonna take our jobs? No way. You guys are idiots. Get out of here. There's the door. Um, because they still have this. They have a weird like power trip mentality. They always will. It's people in charge of important situations and fighters and whatever. It's a weird human condition thing that's gross. But realistically, they're not. I don't want to call them inept, but they're not. They don't have the skills to do what they need to do. It's simple. So either learn, or we're gonna have to change something. And that the way we would do this, I think, I could be wrong, is to go directly to the UFC and have the UFC say, look, this is what needs to happen, at least for our events. They wouldn't be able to do it in this country at first. I'm sure it'd have to be an international show, but they could adopt it. They could adopt something like this in and make it and say, look, this works. This actually works outside of the country. And then they, you put it on Fight Island. There's no commission out there. You bring your own commission. Well, that's the first time I've thought of this. That's the perfect opportunity. Let's build this in Fight Island and see where this goes, because again, guys are still being screwed. The pay is getting better. The attitude. I work with the UFC on a bunch of levels. Like, we just had a sit down meeting with my CBD company and the UFC over a few months ago now, trying to be, the CBD company on the mat. And to see their attitude, the UFC's attitude towards fighters now, comparatively to when I was there, when it was like, I love the Fertitas, but it was a little gangster. Now it's they just look at us. Sure, we are their toys. We're their little things. We're a commodity, but we're treated as a much better commodity. They have the two performance institutes, Vegas and was it Singapore, or is it? I don't know where it is. But yeah, I mean, they really just, a lot of stuff has changed, and I think that would be a good opportunity for them to finally take that step and go, all right, this needs to change.
To get to that point, though, to get to the point where we present to a big group like the UFC a alternate way to score, we've got to build the credibility, and that's what we've been doing since UFC 249. Today, I think we have maybe 20 or 21 senators and counting, active, retired, you name it, Hall of Famer, female, male, all weight classes, champs, ex-champs, title contenders, you name it. And I think the moment when this is presented to the right people for consideration, it has to come with all the data. It has to come with all the track history and go, we did this, we tried it. We tried a few things different. We're not asking you to change the 10-point must system yet, but we have three things that we tried, that we experimented with. One, we had more than 3 people on the panel. 2, we are broadcasting the scores live with commentary, with some kind of education that, well, that was a 10-8 round because he got dropped twice because of that. So more color to the commentary. And 3, we are using expert panels. We're using panels that are filled with experts who know what they're looking at, right? There are times when I'm watching these guys, these senators score a bout, and I have the luxury of having my cell phone blow up with chat activity from all of them, because we need to coordinate the operation. And the analysis that they all bring to that chat was amazing. Like Frank is one of them, Todd Duffy is another one. They are super analytical. And I every time I see that, I'm like, guys, can I share this on social media? Because the world needs to hear this, right? And any educated fan, a fan who loves the sports, would love to get into the mind of Frank Trigg and go, what's happening here? He escaped that particular position. Is that good? Is that bad? Do you count it against him or not? Mm-hmm. And so we want to be able to present this package with data that shows that we tried this new system that did not deviate too far, and it worked. So let's try at an institutional level. Let's try at the promotional level, and see where we go from there.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So for anybody who's listening and doesn't understand from a baseline, can we go back? can we explain the current system and maybe just high level what the pitfalls of it are, why that it's not efficient, especially from a mixed martial arts standpoint, and then really the specifics of how Scoring Senate is scoring an individual fight as it stands right now in the UFC.
Ian?
Right now, we're using the scoring system that is already in place. Sure, as flawed as it is, it's still, it's a system. It works for, I guess, and it works for the most part.
How do you become a judge today? Like if I was like, you know what, I'm a fan. I really like this. I'd love to become a judge. To me, I see, names that are synonymous with horrible boxing decisions. But let's just say like Adelaide Bird. How does somebody like Adelaide Bird become a judge for a UFC event?
The old way was you got like grandfather Dan, or you got a job from your friend. Even if you we obviously see a lot of people like Adelaide Bird knows not much about boxing, and she's been doing this for a long time. And there's a few people like that, more than a few. But now there's actual classes you can take to do it, and they're really hard. I mean, they have referee school, judge school. All this stuff is very, very complex. But you can do it. I mean, it's like just as long as you understand what it is. I mean, you can do it, but still, it's having this in the moment understanding of the sport, being able to break down the intricacies of it, not just doing paperwork and seeing this situation. Well, if A and B equals C, like no, can you even see that well? Do you understand the move that's happening? It's not just about that sort of stuff. It's a very complex system that needs to change, and it's again they can. The 10-9 gets by. It gets by for now because people like John McCarthy have had a voice in it, But again, we can get into that part later because we're not even there
yet. I think the Nevada Athletic Commission has 18 or 20 judges, so it's always a combination of 3 from that set. And the last time I did a research, I looked up who they are and what their background is. I could only find 2 of them with mixed martial arts or boxing backgrounds, which is very, very concerning.
Right? That's so crazy. Yeah. I mean, these are not only financial, but like for me, I've always looked at it as that you can change the course of someone's life.
Yeah.
I mean, it did for me for sure, and of course that was my own fault. Letting a bad decision reflect on everything else I did, but these are just the things that happen, and you have to just use myself as a teaching tool. Like, look, don't be like me, don't do that. This is how it should be handled. And I think just to negate a lot of those situations from happening to these young individuals who are thrust into the limelight, to make it a little easier on them so they don't lose their shit like I did, to not let it happen in the first place. That's all. Make it fair.
So UFC 256, walk through how many senators are on a card scoring at the same time, and like how is that all aggregated to somebody who's on the outside that wants to go check this out in the next fight?
So we pull in anywhere from 9 to, I think we peaked at 11 senators per card, and we're only targeting pay-per-view cards for now as a start. I try to aim for like an odd number just not to have like an even tie, but so far I realize that once you go past 7, 8, even an odd number doesn't really matter. So I think we have always peaked around 9 or 10 or 11 senators. And once in a while, something will happen. It's Saturday night. People have family commitments. So we may have a senator drop out once or twice. And what happens is they will get onto right now it's a website that's password protected. And they will log in and have their phones or their laptops ready with them during a live event. And after the completion of each round, and we are targeting just the main card, not the prelims for now, because to have these senators block up a 5-hour stretch is a lot of time. So we told them, look, let's just focus on the main card, and when a bout starts and a round starts and when it completes, they will each of them individually put in their score according to the 10-point must system, and add a commentary if they would like to, and they click submit. Now at that point, what happens is all these data points from all of them are coming into my into a server, into a database, and in real time, I wrote code that would aggregate these scores together and quickly turn it around and push it to the websites and push it up to Twitter at the same time. So what users can do is either follow the aggregated scores across all 10 senators, or just follow Ian Mccall's scores. And that happens in real time. Or if you follow them on Twitter, it will be pushed out as a scorecard as well.
Have there been any big differences in the cards that you guys have had senators on scoring, where what the score came from the actual judges who were sanctioned by the athletic commission compared to what the senators scored?
I'm trying to think of what we did was we did 2 throwback episodes on YouTube with TJ DeSantis, where we looked at Jones versus Reyes and we looked at Connor and Diaz too. But for the live events, there were a few. I believe it wasn't a main event. It was Aldo and Moraes. I think that one went the other direction for Aldo. For I believe so, if you can remember, Ian. And then there were a few.
Yeah.
There was quite a few.
Did you guys do the last Max Holloway?
Volkanovski?
Yeah.
I can pull up the score. I believe that went for Max as well. I remember that because I was texting Frank Trigg, and Jill Trigg jumped in. She was like, "That's bullshit." Max obviously won, and they have Hawaiian roots, right? So she's rooting for the home team.
So I know, while you're looking for that, Steve, I know you're like, I'm getting way ahead of this here, but I've heard people even talk about having scores be announced after the round and visible for the fighters in their corners.
Yeah.
As a fighter, I mean, what's your thought on it ever getting that far? Is that something that as a fighter you would like? Would it change the way that you would obviously approach a round or a fight, as you kind of know how it's being scored?
Oh yeah, because people always want to say, well, if some guy learns that he's up by 2 rounds, he's going to fight slower. Maybe, but it's also the other guy's going to know he's losing, so he's going to work his ass off to come knock this dude out. So you kind of could have a full momentum swing going into where that's playing heavy for the guy who's losing by 2 rounds. He comes up, he's got to go out there. He has a fire lit under his butt. Now he's got to go finish this thing. He knows he has to do this. So, I mean, there's a few sides to look at it. I think that it would be really, really helpful. And I mean, just knowing is always good. It's really important. So I don't see why it's been kept from us.
Watching that fight prior to coming on here, your first fight with DJ, right? And
I've watched that fight a lot, by the way.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an egregious, I think, example of poor scoring, right? But
yeah,
I think there's a lot of instances where, if you're a casual fan of MMA, the way you watch a fight, it's very indicative of how you could say the scoring is done, right? Like they don't really necessarily understand a lot of the nuances that are occurring inside of a fight. So I was curious if you could maybe explain some of what's really going on in there that dictates who's controlling a fight that you might not be able to necessarily visualize if you're somebody who's just tuning in for the first few times.
Man, well, there is the pace, but see, there's things that people would never understand that you don't feel. Like Dan Gable always said it. There's a book called The Fighter's Mind, where you can physically feel the other person break. You can feel their energy give, and you can. It's like snapping twigs. You know, for someone like myself who studied so intricately facial expression, breath, how their microaggressions are. So that's how deep we go. So you got to think, I mean, from that sort of level all the way up to, the positioning of someone's hands, they're tired. Is their mouth open or not? That's a pretty obvious one. Are you breathing through your nose or your mouth? You know, just looking at damage to someone's face, that's damage. That's that takes away from their performance. And then also understanding, where to hit somebody instead of, where body shots are landed, or punches to the head. There's a lot of intricacies that go into fighting that people will never understand, or because they've never felt it, they've never seen it, and these things they can be so visceral, um, but all the way back into just if you get tapped in, you're in the flow state, you can feel people's energy. I mean, it's not like woo woo or hard to do. Like this is what you, especially if you're at the level that I was at. That's how you get into the flow. That's how you feel all these things. So um, that's why you need fighters as judges. That's why this whole issue. These people will never understand as many problems as they've seen in a book. This doesn't mean much. Like it gives you kind of an outline, like I guess, it's cool, but you have to have actual like hand, real get your hands dirty.
So has there been any like actual pushback from anybody that matters when it comes to this, or is it just more it's hard to turn Titanic around and this is the way that it's been done forever and there's a lot of other things that people are complaining about?
I mean, I've gotten nothing but praise for this and just adoration, just people being happy that this is even a thing, because it's time. Things change. It is. It's like this is we're not giving people a fair shake, and plus think how much content you can create out of this. Like this is what business is about now. It's content, content, content. You can create threads and whole different conversations with millions of views, and just interactions. Looking at people will check and see what did this person score? What did they score as a group? I mean, this could have so many eyes on it, marketing dollars. I hate to molest something into this into money, but you got to look at those sides of it. This is what I do for a living. Like I said, I talk with the UFC about a lot of stuff, but I brought them a psilocybin study. I take this stuff serious, but you have to understand um, the benefits of whatever tool you're using, whatever like this is a tool. So how are we going to use it? Maximize the eyes, the money, all these certain things that need to get what we want accomplished. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you hear my neighbor mowing his freaking lawn right now. But to that point, one example was the last fight we had. I forgot who it was, but there was a couple of blows that people thought were illegal. Some people didn't think it was illegal, and that just blew up on the text messages between all of us. And Frank Trick jumped in, and Nate Marquardt jumped in, and they was like, "Yeah, I think it's illegal. No, it's not illegal. Yeah, let's look at it again." And they went back and forth and back and forth, and that was such an intellectual discussion. It was great, and I asked them for permission to post it on social media and my original thinking, which I think is still true, is that to the extent that the judges' decisions and the senators' decisions are different, that creates chatter, and then that chatter is intellectual chatter, and that's good for so many levels because it educates the fans, right? They'll be like, no, I don't think that's a 10-8 round. No, I think because of the takedowns, Max should have round two. It draws fans into another level where they can talk about a fight at an intellectual level, not just sit back and hope that someone gets knocked out or hope to see blood. They could actually watch it as someone who appreciates the sport at a much deeper level.
Yeah, that was, I mean, when we were talking about it internally, is this something that we should sponsor from Action's point of view? That was one of the first things that we all said as a group, that, we're one bad decision away from a lot of eyeballs being on these scorecards, not to mention, having guys like Ian and, Frank Trigg and Eve Edward, all these individuals posting about this. One bad decision could have Joe Rogan throwing one of these scorecards up talking about how it's time for a change and that there's alternatives out there. And I think that's such a really cool aspect of what you guys are doing. That I also was thinking, it's like you have all these other organizations, right? The UFC has a lot of competition and nobody's doing it to the levels that they are, but there's still some viable alternatives out there. And I, would have to wonder, an organization like One or Bellator that's trying to find differentiation away from the UFC to take something like
100%.
this and implement it because it's a positive change and it's considered something that's actually an advantage over the way that the UFC would be doing it.
Yeah,
I
100%. PFL,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that people can go to, like Steve was saying, for so much education. Like you want fans that are evolving like the sport is. Everyone has to evolve. That's why this makes more sense. I don't want to pick on this poor guy, but the Just Bleed guy, the guy who Just Bleed, like sit there shaking and screaming. "Ah!" Like that's old school MMA. That's me. I come from that era. It was ridiculous the things you hear in the crowd, especially in America. Oh my God! At least in Europe and Brazil, they chant, or at least as an entire arena, they're going to chant "You're going to die" in Portuguese. It sounds good. I don't know what no fala Portuguese, but it's we need educated fans who appreciate it. If you go to Japan, which is the birthplace of giant mixed martial arts, the fans are so educated and respectful, and it's just better. It is. I'm sorry, it's just better, and and I know that we can help the fans become that, because again, you don't get mad at children for being kind of uneducated or stupid. We can't get mad at the fans here who just haven't been taught the right things yet. They don't know, and I mean, take my soon-to-be stepson, for instance, and his friends. They're 21. Um, I mean, those kids, even though he can't, I mean, he can probably protect himself a little bit, but he's never trained a day in his life. Him and his buddies know what's going on in mixed martial arts. They can break it down so well already. So, like, it's being able to do that exact thing with the regular public, not these kids that are super obsessed.
Yeah. No, it just seems like such a no-brainer, right? There's experts like yourself that are willing to do it, and there's an obvious delta as far as knowledge and consistency that's under the current system. And so I don't think it has to be a blame game, right? It's not like, hey, you guys are doing this horribly. I think you call out when it's, not been done properly. But to your point, everything should be evolving. And if there's people willing to do it and it looks like it's a positive change, then to me, it's a no-brainer. And I love the fact that you guys are compiling the data, because data is key in something like this. To be able to take that data and put it behind what's an obvious, really compelling idea and concept, the data is ultimately what's going to drive people to make big decisions that are impactful like that. So,
Well, yeah, yeah, and one thing to keep people honest, to keep the like people. Well, what if you have shady fighters? Like fighters aren't any better than everybody else. I'm like, well, number one, they are because they're martial artists. You can be held to a higher standard. But the thing is these scores will be put on the website forever. So if you have a bad call, we're going to talk about it. People can bring it up and show, okay, what was your reasoning behind giving this score? You have to talk to the crowd. We have to, as again, mixed martial artists or martial artists, we have to be held to a higher standard. And number one, people can get paid doing this, but number two, you can help, better our sport. You can help better just that our little society we've created, and be held accountable. If you fuck up, you can at least explain yourself, and if you have a good explanation that's maybe not the right what everyone wants to hear, but you can explain yourself, then great. Then you can keep your seat on the panel, but sometimes people maybe will have to be voted off. I don't know, but we haven't gotten there yet. No one's made those sort of errors, but we can make those adjustments. It's there's a lot of good things that to put into play here, I think.
I was initially worried about conflict of interests. Rose Gracie brought it up. Rose Gracie told me, don't worry about these things. These are very principled athletes that you're dealing with. And sure enough, we have Alex Perez going for the belt. Very recently, we have Chito Vera, and both Alex had participated as a senator. Chito Vera has signed up, but he has so many fights back to back that we leave him alone. We're leaving him alone until we can get him involved. And um, and sure enough, we these guys were able to the senators was able to put aside, the fact that they're watching their friend, and come up with an objective look at the fight. So it was interesting. It's funny. I tell people who are not as into MMA as I am that working with these centers is very interesting. I mean, they are a different breed. They tend to put a lot more drive and emotion into their craft more than any other industry that I have worked with. I work with software engineers. I work with people in the business industry, people in healthcare. But these guys, these athletes in the MMA space, are very interesting. They go very deep and they invest a lot into the sport. I can pick up the phone and call Ian on a Sunday morning and talk about, hey, what are we going to do for next week? And the conversation will be natural. If I pick up the phone and call a friend who's a doctor and say, hey, tell me about that rash that I saw on TV on the blah blah blah. Hey, dude, Sunday, man, give me a break. I need to unplug. But these guys are constantly plugged in. Maybe I'm reading something wrong, but Ian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you guys seem to be. It's like your life, right? It's like you live and breathe and
Oh,
fighting.
yeah.
Amazing.
Here's a good example. Chuck Liddell. Again, many people know he's like an older brother to me. Um, he'll call me and just talk about fighting for so long, just because he just wants to talk about fighting. Like, sure, we'll talk a little bit here and there, but like, no, no. If it gets to that, he'll chat about it forever. So you have that. That's in all of us. That's ingrained in all of us. We didn't get to this level. Even if you're just a basic person in UFC, you're a badass. You've put in 10,000 hours to be there, and putting in 10,000 hours of something that's that difficult is madness. And you got to think there's some of us that have put in. You have to have 10,000 hours standing, 10,000 hours wrestling, 10,000 hours on the ground. That's a lot of time stuck in a stressed out state of violence. Even if you're giggling and laughing the whole time, like I did most of the time, your body's stressed out. So you're just this hyper aware individual that we also didn't make the same money that other athletes have made. The UFC's always made us really approachable. Um, and just as martial artists, you're just that kind of person. So like I've seen so many other athletes, I mean big name athletes, just not be friendly at all. And I'm just kind of like, that's not how I work. And that's just not that's not in my cards. And again, back to someone like Chuck forcing it upon me, even if I was being a cocky kid. He just like pull you aside, just go, listen, this is what you do. You take every picture, you shake every hand, you talk to every person, look at him in the face. He's like, it's someone else's job to pull you away. So that same attitude not only goes to the fans, but also goes to each other. It goes to ourselves. We have to look deep to accomplish these things. This isn't like, oh, la da, or I'm golfing. Like it's cool. I don't want to poo poo golf. Golfing's great, but it's a little different. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different. So I just think that sort of thing that's in us, it just translates over to all. So just to life
Yeah.
and life as a whole.
Well, I mean, think about even the baddest mixed martial artist has been humbled many, 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 many times throughout their
In front of
career.
the entire world. The
Yeah.
whole world sees you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
So
So, I think there's a level of humility that comes along with, going through that and understanding that, uh, you know, you're not always the baddest motherfucker. Somebody can turn around and crack you in the mouth. Right. And there's a level of, uh, accomplishment and achievement when you're doing things on your own. I always grew up playing team sports, and I love team sports, and I think they have developed a lot of things that have helped me become successful in working with teams. But there's just something different when you're in a sport that's really self-reliant, whether it's wrestling or grappling or mixed martial arts or kung fu or anything that you can do. That's really, it stops with you, and you get in what you put out. Right. So I think back to Steve's initial point, I've had the same experience. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of different fighters and a number of different things, and it's been that same drive, desire, passion, accountability that I find that I've worked with people in technology, very similar to you, Steve, in the business world, people that have become very successful, but they pick and choose what they want to spend their time doing, and they're not always accountable if it doesn't suit them at the end of the day. And I've never found that to be the case with fighters. I've always found them to be, driven and passionate and, willing to be there. So kudos to them. But I know that it's a part of that lifetime journey that got you there in the first place. So.
yeah, it's instilled in you as a young martial artist. I mean, I started doing martial arts when I was 4. So I've always had, sifu or coach or, professor or, someone teaching me how to do this. And sure, they were teaching me how to fight, but that's like, I mean, even to like working with my kids class, the last kids class I had was at Lifetime Fitness. I mean, here in Orange County, it's flagship gym. It's 180,000 square feet. It's like a resort. It's full of rich people and spoiled children. That's what it is. And this is where I grew up, so I know how to. I was one of those spoiled children, but I was also a young martial artist and so excited about it. So I was able to really bridge the gap with these kids and just show them, look, like you're yes, I'm teaching you how to fist fight. You know that, right? Like that. What I want to do karate. I want to do this. I'm like, no, I'm teaching you guys how to fight. I need you to know that. So you have to understand that's a big deal. That's a bad. That sounds bad, right? From a parent's words, yes. Okay, let's take it back then. Teaching you how to protect yourself and the people that you love, or someone you see on the street. You should love that person as well. And then just tying it all back into just being a good person and being a protector. Not being a predator, being a protector of people, using the things that I'm going to teach you for good. Because as your coach or as your sifu, um, don't call me master. That's another thing I made them all stop doing because they were doing that before I got there. And I was like, don't call me master. I don't like that. It's weird. But if you hurt someone or you use what I teach you outside of this for something that's not good, your parents aren't going to deal with you. They're going to bring you to me, and I'm going to deal with you. And I got like one kid, maybe 2 kids that did anything bad. And one kid, it was just because he was twice the size at like 3 years old than anyone else. And he was beating up kids at like 5 or 6, so he just didn't know his size. And, so it was really interesting to see. I got into a class and they were rowdy and they were mismanaged. And, um, and again, nothing against the former people, but that just shows you the care that goes into this. Like the place that my daughter goes to jiu-jitsu, Gracie Baja in San Clemente. Oh my God! After I saw the first few classes, I was like, this is amazing." Like I pay to bring her somewhere for jiu-jitsu. All my friends were like, "What are you doing, dude? Why are you wasting your money?" I was like, "I'm not wasting my money. My daughter's friends go there. She goes to school with all these kids." I'm like, "I don't care. I'm not her coach." So it's
Mhm.
that was a big part of it because if she ever wants to learn, I'll teach her. But rambling here. Sorry.
No, man, I have a 15-month-old son, and I'm lucky. There's a Gracie Academy here in I'm in north of Pittsburgh, PA. Stout Academy. Shout out Warren Stout. He's got a great youth program, and like I talk to my wife about it all the time. I'm like, the age can't come soon enough where we can drop him off and start teaching him things that will build so many life lessons, whether it's something that he sticks with competitively or not. Like, I really wish my parents would have been aware of these things to put me in it. You know, they allowed me to be active, and that's awesome, but I wasn't pushed or really directed into martial arts early on. And, knowing what I know now, I really wish that I would have been.
It was something that my parents saw me have. I mean, I was a violent little kid. I was tiny. I was born at like 4.5 pounds, and someone was always mouthing off. And again, I'm not a large adult, so I really did have that. Like, I just had something to prove constantly because there's always someone picking on me. Again, I was at like really expensive private schools where people have serious attitude problems and they think they can get away with anything. And a lot of them needed to get punched in the mouth, and I did that. And I think that um, well, I'll preface with this: I got bad as a teenager because I got with a gang of other bad kids, and we started to use my martial arts for bad. So that does happen. But as a young kid, it was just yeah, I was crazy, and to have, again, I had amazing teachers my whole life, so as I was never taught this, as was to beat people up. It was something that I acquired from kids. Realistically, now that I look back at it, it was that sort of environment where it was like, okay. And my teachers, my sifu, my dad, my brothers, older brothers, they all fought. And it was like, okay, even after class, my teacher, he would say, okay, look, you have this red zone behind you or around you, 3 feet around you. Someone gets you in your red zone, you have every right to protect yourself. But if they're going to hug you or if they're going to try and hurt you. And I use that to my advantage. But it's being able to be like, look, I know you as a kid, what's right and wrong. I was way too quick on the draw, and it's just being able to be someone like myself who's done it, maybe not always for the best reasons, and be able to teach like that's not how you do it. Just like I do with young athletes in their career. I mentor some of them in other sports as well, surfing, um, all kinds of stuff. And it's like you got to let people fail a little bit, but then also show them the right way to get better. And sometimes that's through movement. Sometimes that's through punishing themselves in a jujitsu match or kickboxing or what have you. But it's we have to kind of pound it as a young individual. You get a little crazy, so you have to kind of work really hard and hurt yourself sometimes, I guess, to accomplish that little bit of freedom.
Hmm. Right on. So, what's the next scoring Senate event that you guys are working on right now?
257, right? Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
It's going to be a big one. It's Poirier and Connor. So it's going to be big. So
Yeah.
we are hoping to break the record by having a lot of senators on it. And uh, partly because it's such a big event, and also I think it's time to step it up. The platform itself can take 100 senators or 1,000 if need be. That's the way I coded the platform to ingest all these incoming numbers and aggregate it in real time. So that's not a problem. So hopefully we can hit like 15 to 20 senators, and I think that'll be insane.
No, that's awesome. What are you guys' predictions in that fight? Do you have any? Are you allowed to actually? I don't know. Are you allowed to give me a prediction based on the fact you guys are scoring?
Oh, of course, because see, this is part of the thing. If we let the people in charge of scoring these fights talk about it, again, back to the education part of it, we're gonna be held more accountable, and we should know. Okay, like, what are your predictions? And maybe not. Well, I guess that might be unfair to the fighters' attitudes. I don't know, but I'm just saying we should definitely should be able to talk about it.
Sure. So, who do you got then, Ian?
Um, you know, I really I really love Poirier. And but I, it's Connor. Connor catches lightning in a bottle whenever he wants,
Mhm.
literally whenever the guy wants. So, I think that we're going to see him do that exact thing. Maybe it won't be around, but I think that I'm gonna call it. I think he's gonna get it within 2 rounds. I think he's gonna get it within 2 rounds. He'll get a TKO.
Yeah.
I have to. I think I have to agree. I think physically and technically, Connor is very very talented, but I think he's incredibly cerebral as well. He's just sizing up people at another level, like very much like Anderson Silva. And I only learned this. I'm not an expert. I learned it from watching these guys talk about them. In one of the fights that we looked at, Frank Trick, Rashad, Boss, and Ian, we looked at. I think so. We looked at a O'Connor fight, and Frank Trigg pointed out some things that regular fans did not catch. I did not catch, and that was how Connor um, is a big believer in regulating his energy or his gas tank. I think he got caught with his pants down the first time he met Diaz, and back to the locker room, he kept talking about energy, about how he expended everything, and that's why he lost. Blah blah blah. And the second time you saw him with Diaz, he was a bit more measured, a bit more like he was regulating how much output he was giving. And sure enough, if you look back at that fight, and you can go to YouTube and find that particular throwback episode that we did, you see that Connor starts to wind down before the end of the round because he was already, according to Frank Trick, and I totally believe it, Connor was already starting to refill the gas tank in the last minute. So he was slowing down. And to us as casuals, to me as a casual, I'm like, oh my God, he's slowing down. He's tired. But in reality, he is already refilling his gas tank at the last round before he gets into the next one. And so that was incredibly interesting. And I think Connor is at that cerebral level. I'm sure all the fighters are, but I enjoy that part of fighting, the strategy, the thinking. I remember one time when I think it was either Anderson Silva giving an interview. I think it was the Chael Sonnen fight. He talked about how when they were clinched together, chest to chest up against the fence, he could feel the breathing of Chael, and he knew that he was tired. And things like that was super interesting. It's at a level of mind chess game that they are playing that a lot of fans don't pick up right away. So I have to agree with Uncle Creepy that I think it may be two for Connor for this one.
No, agree. And by the way, the greatest nickname in mixed martial arts history, Uncle Creepy.
I keep trying to get rid of it. It's in my new career. It is not applicable for my new life in science and healing. But I can't get rid of it without losing my blue check mark. So I'm now being represented by the people, some fancy people in Hollywood from Tyson Ranch, the people that rebranded Mike Tyson for his cannabis company. And we're going through the process of getting rid of the blue check mark, changing back to my name, and and then just being able to not be called that anymore, because I now have a puppet show, by the way. So you got to watch the puppet show to see it, but Uncle Creepy is now not inside me anymore. He's now a puppet. Where is the puppet? I think it's downstairs. So yeah, I was trying to purge that out for so long. It's finally going to be gone soon. I just have to, I don't know, I have to talk to someone at Facebook, I guess.
All right, on the Tyson Ranch guy. Do you know Eben Britton at all?
I've never met him, but yeah, we've just never been in the same room. Maybe I don't know if he was at the party. We had a party at they threw a party at Tyson Ranch headquarters, where it's Tyson's training camp, and I don't know if Evan was there. I didn't meet him, I don't think, but I work with Rob Hickman, and those guys. So it's a good group to be associated with. I mean, it's definitely changing my life. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. I look forward to having that conversation with you. I've had Eben on the podcast. He and I crossed paths a number of times. I did a lot of work in the cannabis space in Los Angeles with my brothers, and he's a cool dude. And
yeah, I've heard good things.
Yeah,
I've heard really good things. Yeah, it's we live in an amazing time. I would just put it that way. Life's getting really, really interesting. And then, with me, it's like I'm in a whole new field of work. Like, so it's very exciting to be, associated with people like Daniel Garcia and Mike Tyson and is it Riley Coyote, or whatever his name is. And I mean, there's a few Lamar Odom. I mean, these are people that are at the forefront of psychedelics. I mean, I'm one of what, three people that was on HBO recently, as far as athletes go, talking about healing and with psilocybin. I'm like one of the first people ever on major television. That's pretty cool. So we're trying to play up on the fact that I'm a comedian. I've got a puppet show. I've got a very short comic career, but I'm working at it. I'm creating content with all kinds of stuff. So um, I've actually traveled out of state doing comedy. So I say I'm not that bad at it. I'm definitely not that funny though. But so I'm an educator and a comedian, and just trying to figure out where I fall into this whole space of Hollywood, because everyone keeps trying to push me into it. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I guess this is fine. I was staying away, but I guess I'll have to try it.
You seem like a completely different person than back when you're, fighting for sure. And it's really exciting to have the conversation, your insight, and I'm super excited to continue to be involved with Scoring Senate. I think what you guys are doing is fabulous. I can't say it enough. I'm going to push as to as many people as I can. I talk about it all the time. Every time there's a fight, I'm sending the links out and I'm just telling people like, hey, you got to check this out. Hopefully after just, continuing to vocalize this, it can be a part of a more consistent aspect of scoring in the sport. But thank you to you guys for, doing the hard work and trying to make it happen. Steve, I think love to have a conversation with you in the future just about your world and technology. I spent the
Absolutely.
last 10 years there myself, and Ian, psychedelics is something that's very close place to my heart. And I think we could have some really interesting conversations as well. So
Yeah, you have my number. Let's chat. We can do another episode, or I mean, we can, let's talk about your stomach though soon, so we can
yeah,
get you better there. Of
most definitely, man. I appreciate it a lot. It's
course.
scoringsenate.com, right?
That's it.
Yes.
And at Scoring Senate on social media.
Yeah, that's it on Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. I will I'll tag that in all the information I put out. But guys, appreciate you coming on here, sharing this whole idea, concept, and having some fun conversation with me. It means a lot. And I look forward to future dialogue with both you guys.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thank
having
you so
us.
much.
Most
Thank you.
definitely. Here's to hopefully a much better 2021 for us all.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
See
Thanks.
ya.